The absolute silence in courtroom 4B wasn't the silence of respect, it was the heavy, suffocating quiet of total victory, for them, for the system, for every neatly pressed white suit that looked down on us from the gallery. And it was the silence of utter defeat for everyone else. When that oak gavel slammed, it didn't just pronounce a sentence, it shattered a community's last hope. 18 years. That was the number. 18 years in a federal penitentiary for Elijah Sterling. My father. His crime? Practicing medicine without a license. His real crime? Saving lives the certified, insured, $500 an hour medical establishment decided were disposable. My name is Nia Sterling. I was 18 then, barely out of high school. And I was watching the best man I'd ever known. A man who literally kept the pulse of Northwood Heights beating. Being erased by a cold, calculating machine. The machine was personified by Judge Thaddeus Thorne. A man who looked like he was carved out of granite and prejudice. He just sat there, high on his bench, confirming what we all knew. In this town, justice was strictly reserved for the wealthy and the white. He was finishing his ruling. A perfect, self-righteous summation of his life's work. And that's when I noticed it. It wasn't loud. It was subtle. A tiny, repetitive movement, his left thumb, rhythmically brushing against the fabric covering his breast pocket. Like he was soothing a quiet ache that nobody else could see. That's what Dad taught me. The body never lies. While everyone saw a powerful, flawless judge, I saw a dying man trying desperately to hide a secret that was eating him alive. The narrative they spun during the trial was slick, beautiful, and utterly false. They painted my dad as a menace, a predator exploiting uneducated communities with dangerous folklore. The prosecutor, Ms. Vivian Shaw, a woman whose ambition you could smell from 3 aisles away, leveraged every stereotype. She'd sweep her hands across the courtroom, gesturing dramatically to the handful of us from Northwood, and say things like, "We are dealing with a deep cultural regression here, Your Honor. People choosing ancient superstition over tested, modern science." The whole thing was orchestrated by Dr. Lionel Gaines, the hospital administrator, note that title. Administrator, not doctor, from the prestigious St. Jude's Medical Tower. Gaines was their star witness. He spoke with the clinical detachment of a man who hadn't touched a patient in 20 years but who knew exactly where the profit margins were. He pontificated about patient safety and licensed efficacy. But what he was really defending was the medical monopoly. My dad's success stories were a financial threat, a crack in their glass ceiling. In my experience, Gaines testified, adjusting his silk tie, these folk healers target the vulnerable. They give false hope, they delay necessary treatment, and they keep their own people trapped in a cycle of medical ignorance. He looked straight at me, this cool, condescending smirk on his face. He wanted me to believe that my dad, who had traded his own time and precious herbs for a single bag of groceries when a mother couldn't pay, was the bad guy. But I knew the truth. I knew it because I was the one holding the hands of the elderly. The asthmatic kids, the single mothers who came to our Pine Street clinic. Mrs. Alara Ruiz, for example, she had come in 3 years prior. Gasping, her skin the color of old parchment. The at St. Jude's had sent her away after 20 minutes. Citing lack of insurance and dismissing her symptoms as panic attack anxiety. They barely looked up from their clipboards. Dad took one look at her pupils, felt her pulse, and knew instantly. Hypertensive crisis with impending stroke. He brought her blood pressure down with a simple, centuries-old decoction in targeted massage points, not with a $5.000 or visit. She was alive today, sitting right behind me, trembling with silent rage. The engine driving Judge Thorne's crusade wasn't just abstract law, it was concrete. Corrosive personal vengeance. We uncovered it in the case files. 30 years ago, Thorne's younger brother, Christopher, a talented architect, died of a ruptured appendix. He'd gone to some self-proclaimed spiritualist in the old Fourth Ward, a guy named Jasper Boone, who promised to cure him with purification rites and smoke therapy. By the time Thorne realized the severity and got Christopher to a real hospital, it was too late. He died on the operating table. Thorne carried that pain like a malignant tumor. But instead of blaming the fraud, Jasper Boone, a documented grifter who used the healer guise to sell low-grade narcotics and avoid police, Thorne blamed the entire culture. The entire community of non-traditional healers. His mission wasn't justice, it was a personal vendetta against the ignorance that he believed killed his brother. Every non-certified Black or Latino healer he sent away was a surrogate for Jasper Boone. And the irony, the staggering, gut-punching irony, was that the man who championed the system that killed his brother was now being quietly killed by it himself. I kept watching Thorne, my diagnosis sharpened with every movement. That left thumb rub? A classic, unconscious defense mechanism for cardiac discomfort. The way he struggled to rise after a long recess. Favoring his left leg? Likely low-level edema and circulation issues. But the eyes, that barely perceptible, jaundiced tint around the whites, that spoke of liver stress. Secondary to aggressive heart medication. He was in heart failure. Silent myocardial ischemia. Ejection fraction probably hovering around 35%. His world-class doctors had him on a ticking clock. Maybe 6 months, maybe 8, and the only people who knew were him, his cardiologist, and the 17-year-old girl he was actively trying to destroy. When Ms. Shaw delivered her closing argument, her voice rising to a crescendo about setting a clear, uncompromising legal precedent, I knew it was time. There was no defense left to make, the game was rigged. I had to change the game entirely. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, and walked to the rail, ignoring the bailiff's warning glare. Your Honor, my voice was steady, calm, the kind of calm that cuts deeper than shouting. Before you sentence this man, I offer a deal. Free my father, and I will heal you. A ripple of confusion, then a wave of scornful laughter crashed over the courtroom. A woman in a navy blazer snickered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Oh, goodness, she thinks she has a cure. Is she going to wave crystals or something? Thorne slammed his gavel once, but his hand immediately went to his chest. His face, usually a mask of judicial indifference, was etched with raw, sudden fear. Miss Sterling, he hissed, you're testing the limits of this court's patience. What did you say? I said I'll heal you. I repeated, my voice rising slightly. I know you're dying, and the finest cardiologists in Dallas can't save you. The laughter died instantly. The room went stone cold. Ms. Shaw jumped up, flustered. Your Honor, this is an absurd attempt at manipulation. Street psychology. She has no idea what she's talking about. I have every idea, counselor, I countered, keeping my eyes fixed on Thorne. The slight tremor in your left hand when you read the docket. The way you unconsciously clench your jaw during moments of stress. Forcing shallow, upper chest breathing. The barely noticeable pallor despite the makeup. You've been hiding it. Silent episodes. Probably misdiagnosed as stress-related indigestion by your elite primary care physician. You have left ventricular dysfunction. Your ejection fraction is around 32 to 35%. Am I wrong, Judge? Thorne's jaw hung slack. Those were the numbers. The secret language of his impending death. He gripped the bench so hard his knuckles turned white. This is a classic con artist technique. Dr. Gaines bellowed from the gallery. Vague symptoms that could apply to any stressed middle-aged man. Vague? I challenge. Turning to Gaines. Then explain this. Doctor, look at the bailiff. Frank Johnson. Frank Johnson, a large man who resembled a human boulder. Scowled. Leave me out of this. Girl. Mr. Johnson, I said, walking toward the bailiff stand. My demeanor shifting into that of a master clinician. You're favoring your right leg slightly. Aren't you? You shift your weight every 45 seconds when standing still. Lower back pain. Right side. Deep and persistent. Started about a month ago. Right after you volunteered to help lay concrete for the new deck at the community center. Thinking you were 20 years younger. Johnson's face was pure shock. How? How in the hell? It's not your back, Mr. Johnson, I explained, pointing to a spot near his flank. It's referred pain. You took an anti-inflammatory cocktail, Advil. Maybe a prescribed COX-2 inhibitor, for the muscle strain from the concrete. You overtaxed your kidney, causing mild renal irritation and spasm, which refers pain straight to that lumbar area. It's simple mechanics and biochemistry. I demonstrated a gentle spinal stretch and a kidney support acupressure point on his foot. Stop the NSAIDs. Increase water intake. Apply gentle heat. Gone in 4 days. Johnson pressed the spot I indicated on his flank. His eyes wide. That's exactly where the pain is worst. The room erupted into chaos, not laughter, but frantic murmurs. Here was undeniable, empirical proof, happening in real time, that this uneducated teenager possessed diagnostic knowledge that their certified medical establishment had missed. The shock triggered the inevitable. Judge Thorne suddenly clutched his chest, his face turning an ashen gray. He gasped, falling back against the bench. A full, clinical heart attack. Call 911, Shaw screamed, scrambling. Dr. Gaines was pushing toward the bench. Get back, I'm a physician, let me administer aid. I lunged forward, beating Gaines to the judge. Don't move him. Moving him now risks ventricular fibrillation. Your medical aid is what put him on the brink. Doctor, you won't touch him. Gaines was hysterical. You'll kill him. You have no license. This is manslaughter. Ignoring him, I placed 2 fingers firmly on the PC6, pericardium 6, acupressure point on Thorne's wrist. The point for regulating heart rhythm and calming anxiety. I leaned in close to his pale, sweating face. Judge Thorne, listen to my voice. You have 2 choices. You can trust the world that looked like you. The world that judged my father. The world that failed you for months. And you will die here. I tightened the pressure on his wrist. Or, you can swallow your pride. Reject the racism and prejudice that has been poisoning your life. And trust the knowledge that kept my ancestors alive when yours refused to treat them. My voice was a whisper. But it carried absolute authority. What's it going to be? Your honor? The system? Or your life? As his breathing began to stabilize slightly under the pressure, the rear doors opened, and 2 figures entered with swift, commanding presence. Dr. Elias Vance, Chief of Cardiology at the Mayo Clinic, and Dr. Maya Jones, Professor of Global Health from Stanford. Dr. Jones approached. I flew in from Palo Alto specifically for this case. Judge Thorne, you are looking at K.M. Sterling, the author of those 12 peer-reviewed papers on integrative cardiac physiology. The one Dr. Richardson calls a genius. She looked at the gasping Gaines. Kessia Sterling was offered the youngest department head position at Harvard Medical School. She is not a fraud. She is a master healer. The revelation was instantaneous. The White Gallery's scorn instantly curdled into terror and shame. The ghetto child was one of the most brilliant medical minds in the country. As I began to administer the rapid-acting herbal infusion I carried in a small vial, Thorne, still weak, started to break down emotionally. I don't hate, he whispered, tears mixing with sweat. Yes, you do, I said gently, continuing my work, adjusting the acupressure, and that hate, Judge, is what's killing you. You've been feeding it for 30 years. Tell me about Christopher. And there, under the combined physical and psychological pressure, the great Judge Thorne finally confessed his 30 years of pain. My brother died because of that witch doctor. He told us it was bad spirits. I swore I would never let another family go through that ignorance. Dr. Jones stepped forward, holding a legal file. Your Honor, we investigated Jasper Boone. He was a documented criminal, a drug dealer using the healer guise. He never represented the traditional medicine community. The real healers in the 4th Ward, people like Elijah's father, tried to warn the police about Boone, but they were dismissed. If your brother had gone to an actual folk healer, one of integrity, they would have recognized the surgical emergency immediately and sent him to a hospital. Your brother died not because of ignorance, but because the system refused to differentiate between a sincere healer and a criminal. The revelation was complete. Thorne's entire life of prejudice, of judicial destruction, was built on a deliberate lie, not a medical one, but a legal and racist one. He hadn't been protecting people from ignorance, he'd been perpetuating injustice out of misplaced grief. Thorne's EKG, monitored discreetly by Dr. Vance, began to normalize as the emotional weight lifted. The herbal infusion, the psychological release, and the targeted acupressure stabilized his heart miraculously. He looked at my father, who was still seated, silent, accepting. Marcus Sterling, Thorne rasped, his voice thick with shame and a terrifying clarity. I owe you, your daughter, and your community the deepest apology. I allowed my personal vengeance and racial bias to corrupt this bench. After reviewing the evidence presented, not through the lens of my prejudice, but through the lens of medical necessity and undeniable success, I find that your actions were performed to preserve human life where the conventional system had failed. He raised the gavel, but instead of slamming it, he held it steady. Elijah Sterling, you are hereby acquitted of all charges. Furthermore, I will personally lobby the state legislature to immediately establish a licensing pathway for traditional, empirically validated healers. This systemic prejudice ends today. The courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in a tidal wave of tears, shouts, and applause from the back rows. Justice, real, tangible justice, had finally broken through. 1 year later, the world was almost unrecognizable. Vivian Shaw was disbarred and last seen working as a compliance officer, far from the halls of power she craved. Dr. Gaines lost his position when the St. Jude's Board, now with 3 members from Northwood Heights, cited his discriminatory policies and systemic negligence. Judge Thorne, completely healed, retired from the bench and became the loudest advocate for reform. He personally spearheaded the Sterling Act, legislation that mandated cultural competency in medical licensing and required insurance coverage for integrative treatments. Nia Sterling saved my life twice, he told the press, once physically, and once spiritually. My father, Elijah Sterling, is now the chief traditional medicine officer at the newly established Sterling Integrative Healing Wing at St. Jude's, the very tower that tried to destroy him. And me? I accepted the offer at Harvard. Not for the title, but for the power it gave me. I established the Institute for Healing Justice, dedicated to ensuring that wisdom is recognized regardless of the color of the coat it wears. The story of my family isn't really about medicine. It's about the courage to challenge the deadly lie that society tells us about each other's worth. Judge Thorne nearly died because he believed that lie. He believed that knowledge and salvation could only come from people who looked exactly like him. But here is the truth that racism tries to hide. When we heal our prejudices, we heal everything. When we stop excluding, we all become stronger. Free my dad, and I'll heal you. 7 words. They exposed a systemic sickness and forced a powerful man to confront his own mortality, his own hate. So I ask you now, looking at your own life, your own community, what prejudices are you carrying that might be poisoning your heart? What automatic assumptions are limiting your wisdom, your ability to connect, your potential for growth? Think about that choice Thorne had to make. Life or the illusion of superiority. Who are you called to learn from today? Someone you've been conditioned to dismiss? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me about a time when someone you underestimated completely changed your perspective, your career, or your life. Hit that like button if you believe justice is the ultimate medicine. And subscribe to join the movement that's proving wisdom has no color. The cure for society's sickness isn't always in a prescription bottle. Sometimes, the most powerful medicine is simply the willingness to listen, to learn, and to heal together. What miracle will you create?